A warm welcome to Around the Corner, a trend seminar on the materials supply for the vehicles of the future. Today we will be presenting 3 general trends, and we will have interesting panel discussions after each of the 3 trends. And here by my side today is Josefina Salén.
Hello.
You are the focus area leader on circular transition at RISE.
Yes.
And you are to present these 3 trends coming from our trend report. Yeah, we'll talk about that later. But before you start with the 3 trends, first of all, a short update on the situation now regarding the use of resources within the vehicle industry.
Yes. So what we see is about the 1% of Sweden's population are members of a carpooling service, and a car is in use about 3 to 4% of the time. The weight of a car is still high, an average 1.5 tons, and it's actually increasing at the moment. And the usage of a car is in average 1.5 person per car. So it's less than 10% of the actual weight of the car. And the average usage of a car today is 200,000 kilometers. And compared to trucks, where we average 1.4 million kilometers. So we have quite a lot to learn there from how trucks are designed and used, probably. And we might hear more about that later. But also we see that electric vehicles has radically changed the longevity of how long a car can be used. So, for example, we have an example from Germany where a Tesla has been driven 1.6 million kilometers, and taxi drivers in New York that also can testify that their electric cars and their Teslas are used maybe 4 or 5 times longer than usual. And also when we talk about the recycling then of material from cars, we know that 85% or more of a car is recycled through the material, but it usually doesn't go back into cars. And rare minerals and plastics have very low recycling rates, even though massive efforts have been made to increase this. And the automotive industry has long since been one of the best examples we have on profitable remanufacturing of certain parts, such as spare parts and gearboxes and motors. So these are some of the kind of just short facts about the automotive industry today. And I also would like to share some insights from a research project that we are working on now together with some of the members in the panel. And some 4 areas that we have identified some key potential for future vehicle fleets. So the first one is that the shift to an electrified fleet with the right electricity mix, that results naturally in large life cycle climate impact reduction. But large impacts from vehicle production mean that greater reductions can be achieved with longer vehicle life. So longer vehicle life is a key area. And when we look at estimates for vehicle as a service models, they show promise of radically increased profits over time, especially if the functional life for expensive components, as for examples and batteries and electronics, could be prolonged, and costs related to visual wear were to be minimized. And the third one is that, which I think is quite interesting, is that there are some simple design modifications that can be made to adapt current vehicles to vehicle as a service models, and then to reduce life cycle climate impacts. And also interesting is that there are customers that we've seen here that are willing to pay for extended functional life of vehicles, and especially fleet customers. So achieving these potentials is dependent on developing capabilities in the business ecosystem at the original equipment manufacturers and the suppliers.
Okay, thank you, Josefina. You will be talking a lot today, so how's your voice?
It's all right.
So we've come to the first trend, and the headline is the vehicles of the future, recycled, bio-based and fossil-free. So it's your turn again.
Oh, it's me again. Yeah. Yeah. So with the end of the combustion engine, other factors have increased impact in the CO2 emissions, and choice of materials that play a much larger and more important role than before. And at the same time, materials need to last much longer than before, which might create conflicts when you use recycled materials. And the activity and research related to new materials and new use of existing materials, bio-based, fossil-free, lightweight, durable, is probably more intense than ever. And the automotive industry, with the large volumes and the high-tech development, is among the most interesting to follow. So we just say watch this space in this area, really. And two other things that we see also that, what is the future vehicle made of? It's probably made of a vehicle. So if we compare with other business sectors, the amount of material recycling related to weight is high in the automotive industry. But the big potential here is to use the traceability in the system and recycle and reuse materials and components already approved for automotive use. And this is a challenge for suppliers that usually source their materials from virgin materials. And now you have that doesn't work in that type of scenario. So how do you work with new suppliers, new business ecosystems that are developing? That's an interesting area to look further on. And here we see front runners in the EV batteries areas, but several other materials and components will be affected in this. And the third area that we want to point out here is the remanufacturing of components, which is at present about 1.1% in Europe. And that's a massive potential to do more here. And because most functional components are lost when the vehicle is scrapped. And just an example, when we have seen the past years problems with the semiconductors and the lack of semiconductors, and at the same time we grind down large amounts of semiconductors in the used cars and just use the material from these and not the actual components.
Interesting. Thank you, Josefina. And now it's my honor to introduce the panel today. A very interesting panel with four. There you are. Welcome. This is Sander Jahilo, Circular Lead at Polestar, Ann-Sofie Wolfsberg, Director of Circular Development at Volvo Group, Peter Bryntesson, Senior Project Leader på Fordonskomponentgruppen, and Johan Andinsson, Head of Business Development and Sales at AFRY. How do you say it, Johan? AFRY, thank you. It's the first time for me. I'd like to start with Ann-Sofie. You heard Josefina's trend report here. Can you give us a short insight on Volvo Group's road ahead to the vehicle of the future?
It's a big topic. What I will want to highlight is in Volvo Group, we have been working with remanufacturing since 70 years. So for us, reman is nothing new. But I do agree that we have a huge potential. We are not grasping a huge percent of the vehicle today and the market. So in my trend forecast, or my forecast is that we will in the future target complete vehicles. It's not just about components for sure, but that we will regard material in another way. We have seen with this, as mentioned, issues in the supply chain now. That will be more and more so in the future, I believe, and therefore also natural that we will regard material in another way. It's not just to dig up more material and use it as we like. It is to source from the existing pool of material that is already running at our streets. So what would that be then? It would be to have a control of the products that is running, that we are having over the years different solutions. So I would think that we maintain and service, repair as we normally do. But with the number of years that we bring in and upgrade our products, that we are then having a pool of refurbishment or reman, and then we keep the products in a good shape for many years. And at the end, when we cannot do reman, it could be repurposed for a second application, or in the very end recycled. And the recycled material would be the source back to production of new components. So we have the closed loop systems. This is what I believe we will evolve over time and take it step by step and to the broader scope of our products, not just very limited number of components.
Thank you, Ann-Sofie. Over to you, Sandor, from Polestar. At Polestar, you have very high ambitions on circularity, as Volvo, of course. But what's your take on the materials side of this circular model?
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to this webinar. Happy to share insights from Polestar. As stated, our ambitions are quite high. We want to be climate neutral as a company by 2040 and deliver a carbon neutral car by 2030. And as part of our roadmap development for climate, we recognized, or we saw through this assessment, that essentially we have to improve the cars as they are right now to a great degree. So, for example, we have to reduce the mass of the materials by 25% of aluminium, steel, and the battery. We would have to reduce the mass of electronics by 40%. We'd have to have almost a third of reused components in the car, up to 25% of remanufactured parts that are made of steel, aluminium, or battery components, and then also on top of that have very high recycled material content targets. So this is all on top of using as much renewable energy in the production and the supply of the materials. So it's a clear indication that resource efficiency has to be such a high priority if we want to become climate neutral. It's not just that we need renewable energy and then that solves everything, because the pace of electrification and the pace of kind of industrial output that is increasing, and the rate of energy needed in the future if we want to replace fossil fuels is just so high that we cannot get a hold of all of that renewable energy. So essentially we need to reduce the virgin material consumption by a huge deal, and we have a material strategy that we've developed, which also sets targets on like what kind of materials do we want to even use in the car. That feeds into also the recyclability and making sure that we get as much material back into the car production streams that we also put in, so that we reduce the amount of materials that are inside the interior, for example, that the materials are less hazardous as well. So removing materials like PVC from the car entirely, which is a big challenge. For example, the shielding for cables, that's kind of like the only solution right now. And then setting targets for recycled content and bio-based content. So we want to go to 50% as quickly as possible, and then see if we can increase it even more. But there's a lot of systemic barriers there that are kind of hindering the progress. One thing is that we're still a small player in the car industry. Our demand that we set to suppliers is not enough to spur them to take action and to actually start developing the closed loop recycling systems. So for us, it is a problem that a lot of the material, according to the EU legislation, it has to be 85% recyclable, and it is. Our Polestar 2 is 85% recyclable, but only a small part of that material comes back into the car industry, because we have multiple different alloys and grades of aluminium and steel, which are, when they're recycled, they're all blended into one kind of alloy or a mixture, which can be then used for many other industries like construction and so forth. But for the car industry, those kind of valuable alloys that are specifically designed to meet a certain parameter in the car or an attribute, those cannot be used. So then we create demand for virgin material instead, which is clearly not what we want to do. So there's a lot of challenges, and we are just kind of trying to pilot through multiple advanced engineering projects, or also our Polestar Zero project, which is trying to bring together different stakeholders, startups, research, businesses, to try to develop the most sustainable materials that could then be put into an actual production car in 2030 to deliver a sustainable and carbon neutral car. So we're taking those steps, but we see the challenges. The wish is there from our side especially, and we're trying to create that demand, and hopefully we can lead by example and pull the industry kind of accelerate that transition towards more sustainable materials.
Thank you, Sander. And over to Peter from FKG, Fordonskomponentgruppen. Now we've heard the industry, and you're organizing and representing the subcontractors for the vehicle industry. How do you react to what you hear? What are your challenges?
Oh, we have a lot of challenges, of course, and what we see, it's not only a technical disruptive future, we also have a business case disruptive future. So it's, as you may know, the supplier industry are producing 70% of a vehicle today. So the business model for the OEM is changing a lot, especially on the passenger car side. And that also affect the supplier, of course. So yeah, everything you talked about from Volvo AB and Polestar affect us a lot as well. We also need to work a lot with the recycling, reuse, and all the reword, of course. And we have 300 members. I will guess 30 or 40 of them are directly producing part for fuel powertrains, and they will no longer exist in 10 years if they don't change their business model and their products directly. So yes, we are part of the system, and we need to adapt and change. And also important is that we have members located in all cities in Sweden. So the OEMs are basically in Gothenburg and Södertälje around. So it's really important that we also change our part of the automotive industry, for sure.
Thank you. And Johan from AFRY, you're a little like RISE, I would say. You are trying to help the industry in this transition. So what's your take on the material perspective?
Well, from an AFRY perspective, we kind of work with everything from, the mining industry all the way to product end of life in the whole company group, focusing in on our services provided to the automotive industry. We are about 1,300 people in 7 different countries working with 40 different automotive OEMs. What I can say is there's a huge difference in maturity within these companies and how we think and react to this. But in general terms, what we can say is that there is a trend of actually discussing materials in a new way, especially when it comes to design and engineering of scarce materials or biomaterials, especially now when we're talking of extending the lifespan of the vehicles. Robustness and resilience are really key. So from our perspective, we need to design for sharing or easily repaired, recovered, remanufactured or composted parts. And we also have to ask ourselves, are we reinforcing the extraction of raw materials or not? Or are we aspiring to reuse or regenerate when we are entering into these R&D projects? And these choices of what type of materials are being made of and if it could be assembled or upgraded or improved in the future are key aspects that we have to factor in our assessments at the moment. For instance, if you look at the CO2 impact on textiles or polymers, they have a smaller impact compared with mechanical parts like drivetrains or batteries. Does that kind of entail that it's worth swapping interiors 4 to 5 times during a lifetime of a vehicle from a CO2 perspective? And of course, what kind of changes will that imply or impact for supply chains or raw material usage, or actually business models for the tier 1 suppliers? Like Peter said, 75% are manufactured by suppliers, and what kind of impact will this mean for them, and how will that impact their business models? So a huge topic with variable maturity out on the marketplace, but it's starting to realign. And I think what we can see, it's driven mostly by legislation or economy or user behaviors. So those are the key drivers that we can identify as actually transitioning this change out on the marketplace. One thing is for certain, we will see new business models and new kind of solutions out on the marketplace. And it's a very exciting time to be in the business, I would say.
Yes. Thank you, Sander. Ann-Sophie, working with circularity of Volvo Group and regarding materials, what keeps you up at night? What's your biggest challenges?
There are so many challenges. Many people talk about the complexity with circularity. What is it even? There are so many aspects, and it will transform the whole way. All of us will have to change mindset in the end, and it goes really cross-functional. It's not just concerning one department, one group, or one area. It concerns all of us and how we act and behave. Totally. So the complexity, I think, is the thing that strikes me the most, and how can we make huge culture change? It's about thinking in new ways, that we are not to just have access to all the resources that we want whenever we want it. It is to regard our resources in a new way, and then treat them as such over the lifetime, and take care of our resources and that we have in the earth. That I think is what strikes me the most, that it's so complex. It affects the current way of working, the organizations, and by that, huge complexity.
Yeah, and Sander, the thing that comes to mind first for an outsider is, of course, the batteries and the critical minerals in the batteries. How do you see the future there?
Yeah, so we made some assessments regarding the total car, actually, including the battery, like on the biodiversity impact and raw material extraction impact of making a full Polestar 2 car. And we're seeing clearly that the battery and the motor are driving that raw material extraction. And this is like a significant shift compared to the internal combustion engine vehicles, where we're just now creating demand for so much more mining that didn't exist before, and that can have very detrimental impacts on the environment. And it's already having those impacts, and they're also including social impacts, which we try to mitigate. But the kind of core of making a battery is that we still need so much more minerals that have to be extracted. So there's no kind of way around it. There is not enough battery minerals on the market right now that we could recycle and make into new batteries. If there was a law that stated that you cannot extract any new minerals, just use what you have, then we would have probably the same amount of electric cars on the market that we have now. And maybe that would spur a huge kind of growth in sharing business models, because there is no other way that people could drive around if they don't share the cars. And in a way, kind of I think this is what's going to happen in the future as well, that the amount of mining that needs to increase to provide all the minerals for making future batteries, because the growth in electrification is exponential. That will be, the opening of new mines will be slower than the demand for new batteries. So that will drive up costs for those electric batteries. And that naturally should kind of spur the thinking that maybe we do need to share more of those cars and actually offer customers better opportunities to have a different kind of use case, not pure private ownership. So that's going to be a major shift. And another part would be also, how could we make those products last longer so that we don't have to recycle them prematurely? And that's something that going into the area of like total cost of ownership, which right now for car makers is limited to the warranty period that you have. The car OEMs like us, we know what are the running costs until the warranty ends. But then after that, the car doesn't automatically get scrapped. It still gets used by many users after that, for who the value of the car will be dropping each time they sell it or buy it. And the costs of repair and maintenance will be kind of proportionally increasing. But they still can run for longer. And this is where the OEMs like us, we're trying to kind of assess, could we start measuring that total cost of ownership until the actual end of life of the car, and see if that could be optimized so that we design for ease of disassembly, upgradability, and easy repairability, so that the costs of maintaining a car come down, and people would be more encouraged to keep their cars running because they can buy an upgrade, they can upgrade the electronic system to have, I don't know, internet in the car that previously they didn't have, or something like that, so that there is no need for buying too many new cars. And this is like a major shift, of course, for the industry as well, that we've all been designing cars for 200,000 kilometers, and if it lasts longer than that, then it's kind of over-engineered. But that mindset has to change, and we know that with electric cars, there is so much potential for prolonging the lifetime, like the examples with Tesla that you brought. But it's still, I don't know how Tesla did it, but they maybe just kind of happened to design over-engineer those motors because it's quite easy to actually make a car that lasts 1 million kilometers, and it doesn't have to be the same materials that last 1 million kilometers, but rather the wearable parts can very easily and cheaply be replaced, because the body structure and the motor, the electric motor, would easily last 1 million kilometers. So there's kind of small tweaks that could be made to the car that would enable a much longer lifetime. But right now we're not incentivizing that enough because the business model there, or the business case, is not strong enough there.
Thank you, Sander, and thank you, the panel, for right now. And we will get back to both production and business models later on. But now it's time for the second trend to be presented by Josefina, and the headline is resource efficient and flexible production.
Yes. Well, one thing that we see there, you could see that platforms, in terms of a type of skateboard, that creates the conditions for a broad portfolio of top hats on the same platform. And maybe in the future that will give the customers the opportunity to just simply change this top hat depending on the season or the need. And one upcoming trend, or possibly upcoming trend in the automotive industry, is that to follow other businesses where a third part developer or producer, they supply the skateboard, and that the character is defined through the top hat design and different trimmed performance and abilities that you add on to this. So a type of intel inside. So that's one thing that we see. And then coming to production, also an interesting ongoing strategy choice that many manufacturers see in the business is how this vehicle is to be produced. And this is kind of going really to the heart of the industry. since it's an industry that is so used and competent in mass production. And in one side, we can see the development of micro producers, small local producers that put together the or remanufacture vehicles or exchange parts and so on. And on the other end, we can see mega casting based on enormous, large casting machines that produce large components where you can replace maybe 70 different parts into one. So a massive leap in production efficiency. And the micro production, that's based on different technical development within automation and robotization, digitalization, 3D printing, and mega casting. That's more driven by technical development within casting itself, and material and process and production technology and large production volumes. So it will be interesting to see which one that, or maybe both or all of them, will be the next part. But then a third aspect of this is that we touched upon a bit, but and that Sander did as well, that the conversion of cars as well. So that's also that there isn't enough material, maybe there isn't enough space to just produce new cars. We also need to convert the existing car, the vehicle fleet. And one example that we have seen is they will work in a project with the fire brigade, and we've looked in Germany where we have seen that the cost of converting a fire truck could be like 3 million kronas, and converting to an electric from a combustion engine to an electric motor, and then 6 million to produce just a new one, and 10 million to produce a new electrical driven fire truck. So where it can be then cheaper actually to not produce a new one but to convert instead. So that's also an interesting part. And there you can also then, you don't have to make new expensive add-ons and to the, when the platform and the diesel engine gets unmodern, then they can just be exchanged, and you can keep the top of the add-ons to the existing vehicle. So we don't have to just build everything new in the. Yeah.
Thanks, Josefina. Thank you. I'd like to go directly to the panel and to Johan from AFRY. Josefina is talking about quite big changes in the production of vehicles. Do you see that as well?
Yeah, actually, we see quite a lot of changes right now, and just picking up on the conversion topic there, we see that trend in heavy machinery also, where the cost of actually the product itself justifies converting them to new drivelines. We see that in the mining industry and also in the heavy vehicles industry, but right now there's so many uncertainties with all the changes that have been out on the market for last years. We've seen anything from COVID-19. We've seen shortage of materials, freight ships stuck in Suez Channel and everything, and that kind of changes the way we think about on how to secure supply chains and actually becoming something else, right? Because you need to prepare and mitigate the risks of this global system. So anything from nearshoring and onshoring is out on the table right now, but also something called friendshoring, to supplying resources or materials from countries that seem a bit more stable in this new context also. But we also see new trends popping up, change from supply chain networks to value networks, where clients actually become suppliers when components or systems are brought back, when parts and components are needed in sectors where they have a higher value. And that's also a new type of business model that is quite interesting to look at. But I think there is a need to actually address, data-driven decisions when it comes to this part. Anything from better decision-making information where we can, reduce or mitigate lead time to maintenance, or extend the use of equipment, or reroute materials where they're mostly needed. So all of these are going to have quite a big impact on this topic on resource-efficient and flexible production value chains. So that's kind of our, key topics that we're talking about right now.
I'd like to ask Ann-Sophie from Volvo Group. Since you've been in production of vehicles for a long time, of course you have a head start, but we're also talking about big changes. How do you see for OEMs and for Volvo the challenge there? Is it's an advantage or a disadvantage to have the production?
Definitely we have an advantage. We talk about there is a huge transformation, but we have a strong knowledge that we can build on. And what we have actually seen is to assembly electromobility products is not that different from the combustion traditional. We have a huge competence that we can use. But I would like to add on to what Johan was into with the data-driven approach. I truly believe that will be the key, that we work in a different way. So with predictive models, we could understand when is the optimal time to bring in the products to the service centers and do upgrades, and both repairs but also bigger upgrades. And by that we would also affect then the manufacturing setup with the different in different sets time we could bring in complete vehicles for an upgrade, so to say, and refreshment. And that would then bring in these different aspects of both repairs, but refurbishment, reman to the products, or where it fits new material, since not everything has exactly the same lifespan. But in the end, then have the major product living much longer. And that I think will be a kind of a huge game changer in our assembly setup, where we today are in the major industry system are very used to the assembly portion. We source new material, we assembly, and then we have the products to our customers. But with tomorrow's situation, I believe there will be a much more mixed situation, where we would have used products in, and we have used material that we upgrade in various ways. And when we assemble the products, it is not only with new material. And that is a huge change. And then we need to work on high volume disassembly. And to be able to do that, we need to have design from the beginning, so we can separate the material, which we cannot often do today in an easy way to the large extent. So there are many challenges, but in those aspects. But we have huge competence that we can build on to bridge those for the future.
Sander, would you say that the big OEMs are vulnerable if there's disruption coming in the production of vehicles?
I think they are. There will be new trends, of course, in the long run as well, with different kinds of engineering methods like generative design and 3D printing, which are still in their kind of infancy. For Polestar, of course, we are tied to platform. So this was an example Josefina had, that there's this kind of skateboard platform and there's different top hats made by different companies. So essentially this is Polestar. We manufacture in Volvo and Geely factories using their platforms. We have a say in how we want those platforms to be designed, but it's ultimately still designed and engineered by them. And then we can deliver and design the top hat for those skateboards. So for us, we often kind of have higher ambitions and requirements for producers where we want to have more circularity, where the bigger OEMs like Volvo and Geely are still kind of in the old structure in a way, or the old mindset where processes have been designed to be very efficient and to follow the same processes and engineering guidelines that have been valid for decades. Of course, there's been incremental technology improvement, but we don't see the kind of leap potential yet. So it's kind of a work in progress. Like the platforms are not designed to be 1 million kilometer platforms. They're still designed to be 200,000 kilometers, even though the materials change over the years and there's technological improvements. But from a circularity impact perspective, there needs to be a bigger shift, I would say. So it's a challenge. Yeah.
Yeah. Peter, skateboard and top hat we're talking about. There must be room for new subcontractors here. Or what do you see in the future?
Absolutely, there is. And now when we are changing one part with 70 part with one part when it comes to mega casting. And these 70 parts are produced today by someone, of course. But what it's also do is solving a characteristic or a function in a vehicle. And here we also will see a lot of new function and a lot of new characteristics in a vehicle that can be solved in another way with other type of products. So, and we see that already today that we have got some new members that have never been into the automotive industry before, but now they see an opening and a business model for their new products, especially in software, I would say. In Region Stockholm made a investigation beginning of this year, and there are 4,000 software companies, IT related in Stockholm, and only 140 are working in the automotive industry right now. So there is a potential to involve more software companies in Sweden, and we are quite good at this digitalization in Sweden, so we can use that a lot, I would say. So absolutely, a lot of companies will disappear, old technique, but many other will come as new as well.
Yeah. Thank you, the panel. You'll very, very soon be back for your last session. Because now Josefina is going to tell us about how technology development governs business models.
Yeah, thank you. So in the truck industry, where the longevity or lifespan of the vehicle is already radically longer than for a car, we see this trend to want to, as you have already mentioned, to hold on to the raw materials and to the components, which then calls for other business models, because today we kind of sell the vehicle and then we give away the material as well, and now we want it back again. And you also touched on this. So what happens, for instance, with today where used heavy vehicles are sold to other countries and cheaper sold to other countries, and will that continue, or will we want to keep the material closer to production, and how will that happen? And of course, the same question will then happen in the car industry, where it's also more common, of course, that OEMs, they offer leasing of used vehicles as well, not only of new ones, and that also opens up the opportunity to get more profit for a longer time of the car's lifetime. And but also, even though when you look at the trends with not the people not owning their vehicles or companies not owning their vehicles. There are numerous companies offering car sharing, and numerous versions of mobility as a service are available. But what we do see is that shift will either happen, as Sander said, when there is not enough material, so you can't get access to vehicles, or when autonomous cars have that type of technology is starting to work big scale. Because we're so used to having a car and the availability of the car just standing out there on the drive, and that's a hard one to challenge, really. But we also envisage numerous different alternatives developing in the years to come, and to test, and due to the increased lifespan of electrical vehicles and the increased use of electric vehicles in other areas and cars, such as trucks, construction equipment, and rescue vehicles as well, there will be new business models developing, and there are already. The question is which of them will prevail going forward. And this, just the last one then, is that we've spoken a bit about the value chain, and everything needs to change there with the systems perspective, and the everyday of a household or an organization that in a circular offering becomes part of the total offering. That must also be viewed with the systems perspective. So it's not only the producers and the manufacturers, but we have to take in the users much more in the entire development of these new business models and new solutions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And back to the panel. I think this subject of business models is very, very interesting. And I'd like to start with you, Ann-Sofie. This must be on very high on your list, new business models for owning a car or sharing a car or whatever.
Yes, of course, Volvo Group is working with new business models. We believe that, we have seen that is a clear trend as well, and that is the way to go with electromobility products. But it will be for a long time a mixed situation. I think the drivers for circularity, circularity is very much matching with new business models, and clearly so that if we have other business models where we have a contact with customer for a much longer period, there is much longer time to do business. Today we have contact for a few years, and then, as mentioned here, the products sold on and then disappear from our radar. So naturally, one of the drivers for circularity it is to do new business, as linked to the many climate reasons that we have been touching before, the material scarcity as we have touched, as well as regulations. But to do new business is definitely there.
Thank you.
As we see it, yeah.
Yeah. Sander, would you say that the technology is the most driving force in new business model, or the consumer behavior, or can you separate them?
That's a very good question. I think it's a mix of both. Like if we go back to the previous example, that there's not enough resource to make cars and people are forced to share cars, then that's one thing. But how could we voluntarily get people to share cars? That's another issue, and that's something where the industry is maybe lagging behind, because there isn't that incentive enough. The current business models for car sharing and ride sharing, they seem to be a bit kind of iffy. The OEMs do not believe that there is a model that works for them yet. There might be companies like Uber and Bolt who could apply their business model and design a car for their business model that would actually work. But right now the cars on the market are not optimized to be in a high utilization scenario. So that's why kind of there is a problem that the business model doesn't work, partly because the product is not made for them, but the product cannot be made to that new business model unless we can prove that the new business model can bring the same profit. So there's a bit of a chicken and egg problem there. And I think with personal cars compared to utility vehicles, there is a kind of a difference as well, that we're kind of okay with lower standards for like shared utilities. Like when you take a public bus or train, you're okay that it's not super fancy, or I don't know, it doesn't have the latest technologies. You still use it because it's a utility that you need. Whereas with private products like cars, you kind of buy the experience as well, especially for a brand like Polestar. We're like a performance high-end car, so we're not only selling the mobility, but like the experience of being in a well-designed car, and then the looks and all of that. And to get that into a shared car model, for example, that's requiring like a rethink of how do we provide the best customer service or customer experience to that person. How can they still feel like they have that luxurious experience, and they don't have to risk that somebody else will stain their interior, or there will be some kind of trash lying in the car, or you know, there is this kind of distinct emotional attachment to personal things and personal cars, which I think over time will change, and cities will be the main drivers for this, because we will be becoming even more urbanized. And I think Gothenburg is showing a good example of just blocking cars from the city centers. So I know Volvo colleagues who stopped using their employee cars because they couldn't park those cars anymore. It just got so expensive. So they started using the M Mobility app instead, which is a great example of how like cities and policies actually drive the change towards more sharing use models. So I think the industry has to follow kind of all the trends and be proactive as well at the same time.
Thank you. Johan, a question that is impossible to answer, but anyway, I mean, we see new generations coming, and the climate perspective and the environment and everything. Do you think that how we see our vehicle will change radically? Because nowadays it's a symbol of your lifestyle, but will it change?
Yes, it probably will change, mostly because of all the topics that we've been discussing here in this meeting. There's a lot to unpack here in this area. But you know, user behavior, we've talked a lot about, you know, the values of the millennials and how they behave, and their, you know, unlikeliness to actually own their own vehicles. We're seeing changes in that attitude when they become parents, for instance. They have a different need. So it's kind of user behavior driven in that aspect also. Zooming out on behaviors, you know, it's kind of interlocking with this whole ecosystem that we have out on the marketplace, because business models are emerging to emphasize on access over ownership to selling performance rather than the vehicle itself, right? So most likely we will be utilizing the vehicles longer, and then total cost of ownership becomes like a big theme for the stakeholders in this, and the trigger for new business models also. When we are moving into this direction, some challenges will remain for the OEMs. It will have weight, will still be a big issue. Cost for new technology will be an issue. Range will be an issue. Lifespan of the vehicle will also be something. So the changes of the offerings to the market and the solutions will be justified based on the business models, because they have to justify the price points and the added value they actually bring out to the market. So this will also trigger changes in user behaviors due to the economic side of the whole thing. But of course, attitudes are rapidly changing in terms of acceptance of new solutions. So I think we will see a mix for the foreseeable future between owning your own car and sharing your own car based on the context you actually work and live in. If you're in a mega city that is car-centric, like Los Angeles, for instance, it will be more interesting than if you live and work in a 15-minute city like Paris or super blocks in Barcelona. So we're going to see contextual changes in these kind of behaviors, and we have to try to meet all these different scenarios with our new business models. So once again, we have an exciting time in front of us, looking forward.
Yes, really exciting. Peter, you will have the last word today here. I'm thinking when we hear about different vehicles for different business models or different needs, that will be, and you produce 70% of the car, that will be a huge challenge, I guess.
Absolutely. And I also would like to answer your impossible question to Johan, because we are located at Lindholmen in Gothenburg, and it's a huge difference by taking the bus from the train station to Lindholmen than taking a car from train station to Lindholmen, because the bus have separate lines and goes in 8-9 minutes. And I know, just for fun, when we get visitors here, I used to ask them if they noticed the brand of the bus they took here, and no one can say what brand it was. They didn't care. They just cared to get from the train station to Lindholmen in a certain time and not be stuck in a traffic jam or something like that. So clearly the brand will not be that important any longer, and our part of the industry is totally brandless. No one noticed there is no Intel inside or Bosch inside, or so it's fits everyone. But yes, back to your question now. It's we haven't talked about the micro mobility and so on. We will definitely see a lot of other type of mobility, and also what we are doing here with this team meeting, teams and other digital solutions is also competitive to Volvo buses, because if we have meetings, digital meetings, we don't need to use the city bus anymore, and they of course sell less city buses in that case. So there's a lot of new competition into the mobility industry. And also I would say we should also start to look into other businesses like the music industry. When 15 years ago, we bought a CD to listen to the music, and then there was a trigger called MP3 coming in that skipped that totally step with CD. We just bought the music instead. And that I would say we will see here as well. We will buy a transport and not buy a car or a truck doing that. So yes, definitely interesting time we have now until 2030. I would say a lot of things will happen. And then we have, of course, regulations and some type of technical solution will be banned in cities and so on. So it's a mixture of everything, more or less.
Thank you all in the panel for very insightful and interesting comments. And of course, this will be discussed further on. Thank you. Josefina, we have time for a short final reflection from you on the discussion here today.
Yeah, it's not a new but confirmed reflection on this, that I think that for other businesses, I think it's just that want to work with circularity. I think it's very, very useful to look at what's happening in the automotive industry. And it's a bit of a luxury actually to have a business to look at, and somebody else, so to speak, doing a lot of experimentation, because it's everything happening at the same time with the large technology leaps in many areas at the same time as there is a shortage of materials and there are changing attitudes in people. So it's everything in one go, and it's very few businesses that have the same challenges. So I think it's fortunate to be able to look at this.
Thank you, Josefina. And thank you, panel, and thank you for watching us today. This trend report is now available at the RISE website. I think you will have the address presented to you. It's right now just in Swedish, but very soon also in English. And once again, thank you for watching and listening. Bye-bye. you.